To have testicles in order to be able to produce the testosterone. And likewise, if you have ovaries, the brain tells the ovaries to make estrogen, and they make estrogen. So pubertal development is something that happens that's very closely regulated. So for instance, when you are an infant, you don't know why, but in the first 2 to 3 months, things are quiet, and then you have this little mini puberty. And the way most people see this is that that's when your baby, this beautiful baby with perfect, cute skin, gets like pimples. Like, do you remember that? You might have noticed babies that just kind of get, and then maybe some seborrhea, and you're trying to take the infant photos, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not going to look good for the Christmas card. So you want to wait, because that's the mini puberty that happens, and we're not sure why that mini puberty happens. Then the brain just says, okay, it's not time for puberty, and things get really quiet until it's time for puberty to start. And then when the signals come again, you're going to make testosterone. If you have testes, then you make estrogen if you have ovaries. And then the signal is also very specific. It is not just kind of a constant, but during the day you're having these little blips. So it looks like a radar, like a sonar. It goes beep, 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 beep. So during times of day, in the morning it's a little bit higher than in the afternoon. And it just goes up and down. And this is what happens until what we're learning is sometime in adulthood, then the levels go back down a little bit. And if you listen to any radio, they are constantly telling you how the levels may be going down. And I think for $6.95, they'll do a full evaluation for you. I'm always curious on how they came up with that. So what does testosterone do? So it's important for your secondary characteristics. So the first line that I put is that it increases your acne, okay? It's going to increase body odor and secondary hair. So I like to think of it as all of the things that make puberty not fun, right? These are your complaints. You have to start wearing deodorant. You need to maybe wash your face a little bit more. And then you get hair that may need to be removed. But these are changes that are additive to what your adrenal glands would do. So you can still have body odor, you can still have pimple, and you can still have extra hair if you have adrenal glands, and everybody has 2 of them, and they're located on top of your kidneys. And together, they make some of those changes, and testosterone gives you even more. It deepens the voice, okay? And it works by thickening of your vocal cords, so your voice deepening actually is a permanent change. You get prominence of the Adam's apple and broadening of the shoulders, and together with an increase in muscle mass that you're going to have in the broadening of the shoulder, you'll also have a decrease in what we call gynecomastia, or a male chest that's more prominent. You also get enlargement of the testes and penis. The sperm production is necessary. Testosterone is necessary for sperm production, and then libido. And everybody knows what libido is, including all our teenagers who are just kind of like looking straight down right now. Yeah? Okay, so that's kind of your sex drive, okay? And what else does testosterone do? It helps with growth. And this picture is intentionally chosen because this is your typical middle school dance, probably a little bit dated in the clothing, but you'll notice that the female attendee is a little bit taller, and then maybe the guy is a little bit shorter, and in terms of where they are in puberty, the stages may be a little bit different. And that really has to do with the timing in which we go through puberty. So testosterone works together with growth hormone. And together, that is what's responsible to give somebody a growth spurt. And for girls, testosterone is not present, so it's estrogen that helps give you the growth spurt. And the timing is very specific. Girls tend to have a growth spurt that's about a few years earlier than boys. And by doing that, you end up typically getting a girl who's going to be, if you had to take a girl who is 5'2", it's about a 5-inch difference between male and female in height. So that would be equivalent to a guy being 5'7". Okay? And that difference is due to the timing of the puberty as well as the fact that boys tend to have more of a growth spurt later in puberty, and girls have a growth spurt earlier. And testosterone is also important for promoting strength. So again, we talked about increasing muscle and its lean body mass, but it only is going to be there if you work at it. Because I have many guys who say, I've got testosterone, I'm receiving it, but I'm not seeing the muscle mass. And my question to them is, well, what are you doing to increase your muscle mass? So it gives you the ability to increase your muscle strength, but you also have to develop that once you have it, okay? It's not going to be automatic. So exercise is really important. And again, testosterone will also work together with growth hormone to build that muscle mass for you. And in older men, there are lower levels of testosterone, and it's been shown to impact certain specific amounts of muscle strength and muscle activity. So what they found is if you had to do grip strength, so if you're having to do any muscular activity that's sustained, holding something or lifting and holding it up, that is going to be impacted by your level of testosterone, but not so much of an activity as walking, where it's kind of a kinetic muscle, right? If you're walking, you're running, but if it's just a sustained one, that one's more affected by testosterone. Testosterone is also important for your bone health, and again, there are all three components working together. So what's interesting is you need both your growth hormone, hormones that help you to grow, hormones of either testosterone, and if you make estrogen, either sex hormone is important, and mechanical loading. So that's where exercise is. By having all three present, that's what keeps our bones strong. So bones are actually an organ that's continually changing in our body, even though you have your bone mass that you build up until you're about 25, unless you're continuing to exercise and doing particularly weight-bearing exercise, and you have your growth hormone, and you have testosterone or estrogen present, your bones become weak. And interestingly, when the green represents, someone who's not had any signs of puberty, and then once you have the exposure to sex hormones and you start growing with the growth spurt, then your bones will become one of two ways. Female bones are thought to be more ovoid and smaller, whereas male bones are bigger and more round. And that actually is important later on in life, and I'm talking, 60s, 70s, in terms of hip fractures, because the thought is your strength of your bone and the shape of your bone will later on affect osteoporosis risks. And that has to do, this is one of my, in addition to doing work on the brain with Dr. Reese and his lab, another area I really like is bone, and it has to do with the area of the bone in which each sex steroids affects how your bone is formed during your formative teen years. So testosterone comes on the outside of the bone, on top of the little level of estrogen. So even if you're a male and you make testosterone, some amount gets converted to estrogen, and that is to protect your bones, and you have a thin layer. And on the outside of your bone formation, that's where testosterone is impacting. And then on the inside, there's causing some of the holes in the way your bones, I think everybody's seen like a chicken bone. If you break it, bone is just not solid, the way the holes and the lines flow in them. It's very specific on which hormone is affecting where. Whereas estrogen has more of an effect on the outside and the way the shell is made. So long story short, this is what kind of happens. You get an expansion of the bone in blue if you have testosterone, and then kind of a shrinkage and a reformation from a circle to an oval if you have estrogen, so that together the way your diameters and your layers of the bones come together and form your strength for it is going to be affected. Testosterone is also important in terms of fat distribution and where you have fat between males and females. And obviously there's an apple and then a pear, and you can see like when you put the fruit down, right, whether it's able to stay and how it balances is going to be different. And this has to do with how your fat gets distributed. the type of fat you actually have between males and females is actually different. And so this shows you that males have fat more around their organs. So we can't see it. So if you had your kidneys and whatnot inside your body where your organs are sitting, there's more fat that's surrounding and cushioning those organs. And then they have less fat around their belly and their buttocks and thighs, whereas women tend to show some of our fat around our belly and then maybe in our thighs and buttocks. Think about jeans, right? They have like curvy shaped jeans, straight leg jeans, I mean all the shapes and the cuts of jeans. And that's the whole reasoning, is having to do with where our body fat is. And then it also matters where your fat is, if it's going to be above the waist. It's not, it's more than the waist, it's above the groin and below. And then upper body fat for your body can be used more easily than if you have fat that's below. And so your fat is also something that's always being used up to have a fuel for your body. And so having the fat be in different locations is impacted because the metabolic effect of the fat is different. So fat that's around organs are thought to be causing an increased risk either in diabetes or heart disease, and testosterone can help break down that fat. So that's why you need some testosterone to help break down the fat to prevent diabetes, not be as insulin resistant, so whatever insulin you make in your body, you can use it more effectively. And it also means that having increased testosterone means more muscle mass, and if you have more muscle mass, it also means better use of the muscle for the insulin and therefore less likely to have diabetes. So how can you have more muscle? By having more exercise. And by having more exercise, you're having your muscles get stronger to use up more insulin effectively, less likely to get diabetes, and it's also good for your heart because you're breaking down the fat and also having your heart pump and work. So that's how exercise comes into play. Testosterone, interestingly, also prevents, this is a fancy word, pluripotent stem cells. So your stem cells, when they're made, they can become any type of cells. They can be a bone cell, they can be a nerve cell, they can be a fat cell. And having testosterone present is going to make it less likely to become fat cells. So that's how testosterone can affect your overall metabolism that you might not have known. Now the other one is also for your blood. So you need testosterone for making erythropoietin in the blood, and it's a protein that helps make more red blood cells in your blood. And red blood cells are the ones that carry oxygen throughout your blood, and it keeps you from becoming anemic when you have a low count, and maybe that makes you more tired. So if you don't have as much energy, sometimes you want to check your complete blood count and see where's your hematocrit. This is something that your doctors can do and make sure you're not anemic, either from not having enough iron or because you're not having enough testosterone and your actual erythropoietin level is low. And there's different ways to kind of do that testing to know if it's just from lack of iron or that you needed more testosterone. But that's kind of how it also helps your red blood cells. So how is testosterone supplemented? So there's the injection, and in our clinic, I prefer the subcutaneous versus the intramuscular. Subcutaneous can be a pain in that, no pun intended, but it is administered more frequently. But the thing is, the needle doesn't go straight into the muscle, it goes in at an angle, so it may not hurt as much. So that's kind of your kind of trade-off that you may do. Whereas intramuscularly, you go right into the muscle, but then you don't have to do it as often. So you just have to think about what's your preference, right? Do you just want to get one big shot and not think about it for about a month? Or do you want to think about it every week and get little shots that don't hurt as much? Then there is the gel, which is a packet or a tube, and you take it out, it's like an ointment, and you're going to administer it topically on you. There is the deodorant form, which is into this container, you put it in and you're going to put it under your armpits. I usually say don't do it at the same time as your deodorant, because then your deodorant won't work or your testosterone won't work, right? You do either one in the morning. Usually the deodorant is done in the morning because you're going to go out into the world, and then maybe at bedtime you do the testosterone. There's a patch. It comes in different sizes, and sometimes I've seen people have a reaction to the tape from the patch. It's not the medication, but the adhesive. There is the foam, and then there is a pellet. And a pellet a doctor has to insert, and right now the pellet is only 3 months. But you don't have to think about it for 3 months, but it has to get taken out and then replaced again 3 months later. So the important thing on any of this is knowing that the doses are not the same. So you really have to make sure that, number one, I always say, check with your insurance before you switch, because I always like to go with the one that your insurance is going to cover. And then depending on what formulation you're going to which formulation you want, have your doctor calculate the adult dose or whatever dose you're on that's the equivalent. Some people think, like for a patch, oh, what if I just cut it up? I need half a dose. It doesn't work because the medication is in the center of the patch. So if you go ahead and cut it up, it's going to leak, and therefore it's not going to work as well. Okay. And then the gels, is a little bit easier if you have it in a packet, because you could say I gave half a packet, but that's kind of eyeballing when it's in a tube. And I have adolescents. I find it hard because for them to consistently get the same amount squeezed every day, and it's hard to tell, right? Do you have a pea size or a dime size? They don't know, and I won't know either. And then the hard thing for the pump is that it's the fancy way of saying one pump is one attenuation, but when you pump it, a certain amount comes out, and that's the whole amount that needs to be applied. But if your hands are warm, and if you ever put like mousse in your hand, you need to be able to put the whole amount on. So I don't like to use it when some people say do half a pump, because as that foam is melting in your hand, how do you know what a half is, right? Like how do you cut it and throw it away, and then what are you doing? Washing it down, you're saying, I have some kids say, oh, I just put it on my pants or, on my legs. Well, now you just like gave an amount. So these are just little nuances, but it is important because when you're checking levels and we're asking you how much you're on, we're asking for a particular reason so that we can kind of see what you're actually getting in terms of bioavailability. So with that, that's kind of what testosterone does and its formulation.